tell them it's okay to hate reading, that I don't expect, I tell them that you're not going to get an A in this class because you love reading. So it's okay if you hate reading. And just validate that what they're saying is okay, because they kind of expect me to fight with them, you know, oh no, reading's great, you gotta love it, you know, so I just start out, yeah, you're right, reading can be terrible sometimes, you know, and they're like taken aback that you've validated what they've said. So that's one of the first things I always do, is agree with what they say, at least in some way, and then I try to give them another thing, you know, like, well, have you ever read anything that might be a little bit interesting, you know, what do you like to do, you know, and pick a sport, pick a music, pick a topic that they're interested in, and, you know, oh, well, then, you know, what if there's a news article on that singer? Would you read that? Well, yeah, maybe, you know, so kind of get them agreeing that there might be a little bit of value in reading, and then pick the small things that they can start with.
One of the things that I like to do is, we have quite a collection of graphic novels, and we have a lot of anime materials that are also graphic novel materials. We have gone to the book sales and purchased everything we could find, you know, at 10 cents a copy, and put them in the room. Every student, when they come into the lab, if they don't have an assignment to work on, must read a book. It could be a graphic novel, but they must read a book.
Can they read their text messages on their phone?
No.
Can they read Facebook?
No.
Because we have the same rule, and those are the questions I get asked.
Yes. They do walk by and go, look.
I'm really reading on my iPad.
Yeah.
Really.
However, we do have some students who are actually reading books.
Yes.
And they, see? They show them to us. Yeah, validating the fact that they are unhappy, don't like to be there, and yeah, it sucks, it's terrible. It makes them somehow feel better about themselves. It's like, okay, all right.
I always like to share with my kids at the beginning of the year that I was never a strong reader, and I was probably in their shoes at one point, and
I can't say that.
really fought my parents a lot in reading, and then really began to enjoy it, and enjoyed it a lot in high school, and especially in my undergrad classes, all the literacy ones I just knew. I had to be a reading teacher, so I think them kind of hearing that I maybe went through the same struggles as them, they like to hear, and also I just think a huge thing is choice. That's what I've learned over the years, is that if you're in a reading class where you're forcing them to read a certain, you know, book or article or whatever that everyone else in the room is reading, it's just a lot more difficult for them to delve into it. And my reading program, I'm very fortunate that I have multiple resources where they get to pick what they're going to read. My program has a software component to it where we use Chromebooks as well. I just got a grant for those last year, and that is a huge interest piece that they get to choose whatever topic they want to do on that. They get to choose whatever books they're going to read for independent reading. There's different projects that go with my program, and they get to choose how they want to do that. And I think that that really helps. I actually just had a girl yesterday. I always use a timer, and the timer went off, and she was just, her mind was blown that the class was over. I'm like, it's time to go. You can come back tomorrow. She's like, but I love this class. And I was just like, yes. It's good when you hear those things that they're connecting in some way with literacy.
One of the issues that I ran into the last couple of years, because I covered for a teacher who was on sabbatical, and I was teaching Reader's Workshop. Yay! What a great class. Was the students had been signed up to read specific books, and I'm looking at the list and thinking, wait a minute, these are seniors. When was the last time they had an opportunity to pick a book that they wanted to read? So I started this conversation with the students in the first semester, and I said, have you ever read a book you wanted to read in high school? Well, we don't have time this year. No, we have too much stuff to read, and we have all of these books we have to read for classes, for our English classes. I said, well, when was the last time you read a book you wanted to read? Oh, a couple summers ago. These are honors students I was talking to. I thought, holy cow, this isn't good. I said, okay, here's what you're going to do. We are all going to the library, and you're going to pick out a book of your choice. It needs to be 200 pages or more. And I'm going to give you time in class, 1 day a week, to read. You would have thought I had two heads. But they loved it. And I had students come away from that experience saying, it's the first time I ever finished a whole book, including the ones they were reading for classes. I said, okay.
La, 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 la.
Exactly, I didn't hear that, but it was a real eye-opener. And so this year, even with my grammar usage and style kids, nice English class, they're all getting to pick a book of their choice, which they already have. So I won't make that mistake ever again. They need time to.
They're not diagramming sentences
Excuse me. Oh, yeah.
all the time?
No.
Oh my God. I can't imagine that.
It's an elective course, by the way.
Oh, well, not to put it that way. Okay, so this is a great opportunity for both faculty and students to ask your questions because we still have 25 minutes that are reserved for you to ask questions about things that may have been referenced or things that you've thought about and you've thought, well, I mean, maybe I should ask that or ask it. I mean, this is the perfect opportunity. These are people who do this every day. Find out how they deal with XYZ scenario.
I've got a question I wanted to ask for some time.
And I've shut it down.
How long these really wonderful things that you do get into an
How does it fit into APPR? It does. The observations that we are getting, they look at the progress of the students. This is where that 5-week time period works really well for us. We don't do an SLO at that level at AIS, although where we get our marks is in conjunction with the Regents exams and the core Common Core exams. So it's like a double blessing. The course that they're taking and the AIS that they're involved in both get.
Both get
Yeah,
the
we do.
scores from the.
Yes, we do.
Mine is a little different. I do a slow and we use the STAR rating assessment as well as the New York State test. But the problem with me is I could be a great teacher. All my observations are wonderful. I get high scores. But I have the lowest kids in 6th grade that are reading below grade level, that are getting ones on the New York State test. So unfortunately, my score might be very high for my observations, and it usually is, but then I am sometimes developing or ineffective because I just have the low students and they just score lower. So unfortunately, I get nabbed a little bit because of that.
It may have increased, but a lot of people want to pop up. That doesn't show up.
Right? Yeah,
My SLO is the English 9 or the English 10 or the English 11, depending on the student that they're in. And the Regents also counts towards it instead. So I do have a growth score, and I agree that you can show effective and highly effective in your observation, and then the growth score is lower. Fortunately, our district argued or somehow got it so that they kind of do an overall, so they can adjust the growth score based on over the entire district, although the new APPR, they won't be able to do that anymore, but it helps us the past couple of
It's
years.
just a percentage of point.
It's percentage.
There's a percentage as well.
But as far as the observation goes, everything we do does fit into the APPR observations. I've had unannounced visits where they've come in while I'm showing CNN student news, and all they need to do is stay there for 5 minutes, and they can see the written work that the kids are doing. They can listen to the interaction, the way the kids are engaged with each other and with me, and they know exactly where I'm going with the literacy and stuff. Plus looking around the room. I mean, I have stations around the room. I have, posters that help them remember what they have to do with different things. So they can see the literacy embedded throughout, giving them tips and tricks of what the students need to work on. Because I'm not always working with all the students, so they know to go to stations and to pick up materials that they need to work on and stuff. So,
Okay, someone else? Yes, ma'am.
What do each of you use to assess your students and to drive your instruction?
In AIS.
Pardon?
In AIS?
Yeah, what do you use to assess their progress and plan your future teaching with them?
We use whatever it is that they're working on in the classroom. So if a student comes in and they're saying, okay, so I'm working on a mice and men, and I pull whatever the teacher has. We're using Google Classroom, so I've been invited in all the classrooms. I can't pull copies of everything that the students are supposed to be working on. And I can assess where the student is by looking at their progress through their material, what's been turned in, what their scores are, and go back, reteach, support, augment, until I have them up where they need to be. It's not always a perfect fit, but this system seems to be working better than we've had in the past, as long as the bandwidth doesn't crash on us.
Luckily for me, assessing my kids, a lot of it has to do with an online program, which is really nice. We do something called an SRI, and that's a Scholastic Reading Inventory. And we use that as a baseline. Like I went and tested all the 5th graders last year in June to make sure that they would need to be placed in a reading class in the fall, and which specific room they need to be in for that, so that they're kind of in a group where they're amongst students that are around their same level. We're actually about to take it again in 2 weeks, and I just, I'm hoping to see growth. I don't like to do it in September because you might have the summer slump, and I'd like them to be in school for about a month, and then we'll take it again in January and May. So that is my biggest reading assessment. I also do fluency charts with my kids because a lot of times these are the kids that are going to CSE meetings for their IEP goals, and a lot of times they want to know how many words they can read per minute, how is their comprehension, and I do all that. I do a lot, so it's progress monitoring. But that SRI is 3 times a year, but the fluency is every 2 weeks I'm doing that. So it's a lot of data, but what I found over the years is I let them do it. I let them tell me what level they're supposed to be reading at next. I let them graph their words per minute. I let them put on the chart how many of the comprehension questions they got right, and then they're tracking it themselves. I also do a goals chart, and that's a little more of an informal assessment, but they need to write down something that they can specifically do in the reading class with usually their book or the software program. And if they accomplish it by the end of the month, I have some rewards and things that they do. But it's displayed on the wall, and they have to look at it every day and remind themselves what they need to be working on in the reading class. Thanks.
our district has standardized assessment with Fontes and Pinnell. They get assessed 3 times a year from kindergarten up through 8th grade. The Fontes and Pinnell really ends at 8th grade, but for my 9th or 10th graders that are reading below level, I have pulled out the kit and continue to assess them until they make some growth. It also helps with CSE meetings to have that data. But primarily what drives my day-to-day instruction is informal progress monitoring, anecdotal notes, things like that, connecting with the classroom, because so much of it is driven by how they're doing in the classroom, whether they get to exit AIS or whether they're struggling so much they have to be put into it, that I do try to align a lot of what I'm doing to check base with the classroom teachers, so.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up to that. I guess, my question is why? Why do we not continue to assess these kids 9-12? I'm in a building, a 7-12 building. We're giving all of our kids the SRI, at least to 11th grade, because at 12th grade, I guess at that point, they're going on or they're not going on. But, you know, wouldn't it be beneficial to continue to monitor this? And then if so, I mean, where should that data go once we have it? So, like, I know I get a copy of it from the ninth grade, and I teach math, and yet he hands me a copy of where all the ninth graders are. So I can see it, I can look at it, I can see where kids are, their scores and stuff. But, you know, if I'm not mistaken from what I'm hearing, I understand you guys don't administer the AIS classes, but isn't that something that we should be doing, maybe in the ELA courses or something, to collect that data, especially for RTI purposes and such?
As if I were goddess for the day, it would become a part of my district. The decision was made 2 years ago to pull the plug on Read 180, SRI, all the testing that we did 9 through 11. So the only thing that we're working with right now, anecdotal information, working with the teachers, and what happens on their Regents exams. That's all we have to go on. So we've got to make it count a lot. It's very hard because we don't have anything that is specific for us to look at.
We do 6th through 12th grade, the STAR assessment 3 times a year. The reading kids get the SRI 3 times a year. They just
Still
started.
6 through 12, the reading kids?
Right. Well, really, I don't know any 10th graders that are in Read 180. Usually after 9th, they're exiting because then they have all these electives to do, and then they might be put in more of like an AIS app lab, or I'm not sure, I think they call it an app lab. But I just pushed for last year doing the 5th grade SRI because they are doing DRAs in our school, K through 5th. And then they come to 6th grade and surprise, you have this new assessment to take. So I like to give it to the reading kids in 5th grade so they just know what to expect when they come up to the middle school. And then we just started last year, all the 8th graders got tested because we're sure that there's probably some that kind of slip through the cracks and we're never in a reading class 6th through 8th. And then we make it a baseline that they have to get 1,000 proficiency on Alexile before they go into 9th grade. And if they don't get that 1,000, they will be in a reading class. And that's a huge for them to really realize that it's an important assessment. They really need to do their best on it, or they're going to be in a reading class if they've never been in one 6th through 8th grade. So they just started that last year, a little bit of my guidance, because I agree, why are only some kids getting it and some not? Because it is eye-opening to see, wow, he's reading at a 2nd grade level in 8th grade, why is he not in a reading class? So it's definitely something that's progressing, but the STAR is what they have consistently used in my district 3 times a year. I personally prefer SRI. Because SRI, the kids are getting just a number, and other kids might not know what that number is, and then they can look at the chart and understand what it is. STAR, it's really defining, oh, you're only at a 2.3 grade equivalence, and that just looks terrible to me. Or I'm a 500, even though it's about the same. It sounds better.
I think finances cuts into it too. You know, I think right or wrong, by high school, the driving force is the Regents exams and getting them to graduate. So I agree, as my colleagues have said, I agree that keeping data on the students and watching the progress would definitely help, but I just don't think that I don't think our district puts resources into that. I think they put it elsewhere and just expect us to figure it out on our own to get them to pass those Regents exams and graduate.
I just have a follow-up. So Jill, you said they use the STAR through 12th grade?
I could be quoting that wrong. I think it might be 9th. It seems like everything ends in 9th.
And I asked because the STAR caps out at like 1,300 websites.
Yeah.
Which would
Well,
be,
that's the SRI is
what does SRI cap out at, do you know?
13.
13,
Yeah.
so they both
The
have-
STAR isn't a lifestyle. It's a grade equivalence. Is what the number
Yeah.
is.
But if you could pay for them to do it.
Yeah. Yes, it is 9th grade. I mean, it's hard for me to say because I'm only in the middle school, but I am in the 6-12 department. So maybe I need to ask that in the next department.
No, I was just curious because I heard that.
Yeah.
Wait,
chances are the students that are at that lower level are probably still
Yeah,
doing
the
it.
lower level, it's fine,
Yeah.
but I was just thinking if that was, and I just asked because I know the STAR is used for, at Cortland. They're using it for APPR.
Yeah.
So the freshmen, and I just
Well, that's what my
know that
son-
they do have the Lexile on their reports, because I saw my daughters. So that's-
Yeah. Well, definitely 6 through 8, they are doing the STAR 3 times a year. It's just embedded into the schedule, and it's expecting all students. But high school, I really can't speak to since I'm not there.
Sorry. I was just-
No, it's okay.
Good question.
You mentioned several different technological aspects that you incorporate in your classrooms. Are there others that you have used and have the effects as you kind of brought these digital literacies and stuff like that in the classroom been mainly positive from your students? And how do you deal with students' access to technology almost all the time in the classroom and stuff like that?
We have to set up pretty structured use
Sure.
when they come in. I use Do Nows on the board, on the smart board, I tie in my computer, and show them up there, but then the kids also have access to it via their Chromebook. If they see that's up and running, then that's a cue to open up. If it isn't, if the smart board isn't on, they're supposed to leave those closed. I will gently, or not so gently, remind them if they pop them open the minute they walk in class and there's nothing for them to do with that. Yeah, you have to set that pretty carefully, right off the bat.
I mean, for me, I used to work at the elementary school where we did not have any kind of a digital software program. It was like a workbook. And because I was teaching that with them, I tried to tell them when they come to middle school that they're so fortunate to be able to use Chromebooks when they just use workbooks at the elementary level. So I tried to go over a lot of expectations at the beginning that, you know, we're using these Chromebooks for a purpose, to become a better reader. And so in terms of just them going maybe on different sites or something, I just really closely monitor that, that they, you know, need to be using it for a certain reason. Because at the beginning of the year, it's very exciting to log into the Chromebook for the first time, and then they automatically ask, can I just browse and go on anything? And maybe the first day I'll let them do that, but after that, no. Because really, I have to think about that our district is paying for something that is so expensive, and it's, you know, for a reason for them to become better readers. And so I have to be very strict on that they need to be, you know, only in the program.
We have laptop and Chromebook cards that we can sign out, but not every student has access to it. And my room has the teacher's computer and then the smart board, so, you know, I can do some digital integration with that, but not having them individually on a regular basis.
And since the influx of technology being accessible so much in the classroom, have you seen positive results over the time of incorporating that, or have you not noticed any difference really at all?
Well, it sounds like every classroom has a smart board at Ithaca. At Dryden, we have in like 6 through 8, there's probably 5 smart boards.
Okay.
I had a chalkboard in my room as of last year, and a requested a whiteboard. I mean, we are very low on the technology. It sounds like, you know, other districts that are so close, Ithaca,
Yeah, I'm
way
just
higher.
wondering on the difference in that, like traditional kind of teaching versus this new kind of technology influx.
Well, maybe I can put this into perspective. The principal of the high school, very reasonable man, he said, the one thing you've got to remember, he said, good teaching is good teaching. And no amount of technology is going to take the place of good teaching. And so although I use it and my students use it, it is not what I use for everything in my classroom. It all has a time and place. And I'm not a digital native, obviously, but I know that it works and it does a lot of good things. But there are plenty of times, I walked in today and I said, close them. But close them. You are going to read hard copy today. So it's because textbooks are expensive. You buy 2 textbooks and it's more than the cost of them. So some things we print off. Yeah, simply because it makes sense. But it's not for them.
I think it works as a nice hook, the technology definitely gets them interested and stuff. Plus, it's a nice reward when I'm having them do vocabulary and making them go to the shelf to get the dictionary or the textbooks and use that, and they're grumbling as they're flipping the pages and claim they don't know the alphabet and things like that. Can't possibly find it, you know. It's not in here. I've looked, Mrs. Brown, it's not in here. Okay, you know. So then every once in a while I'll say, okay, today you're allowed to Google the definitions, and it's like, oh, wow, this is awesome, you know. And then we'll compare the definitions they found on Google to the definitions in the dictionary, and, you know, some real eye-openers sometimes. Well, Google said it was this. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
And isn't it just such a different, just